Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to give it a few more minutes to get some people inside, but welcome to the panel discussion. This is the New York Campus Program Experience. I'm Ka Tse from the New York Madison Cohort of the Campus Hybrid Program, and I'll be hosting today's podcast. Here today, we have with us two App Academy alumni, Jacob Benowitz and Janera Crispin. Welcome. I'm glad both of you can make it. All right, and I see a bunch of people have already entered the chat. Welcome to everyone here. All right. I think we're all good to go. So for starters, the basic structure of this podcast will be some questions that I ask about their experience throughout their program and how they're doing now, and also open up for Q&A for the live chat to ask. So you can always feel free to ask some questions in between, right? And then we can always answer them as we go on. So let's start off with some introductions. Jacob, do you mind giving us a brief introduction to our viewers and tell us when you graduated?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Jacob. I'm from Pasadena, California. I moved to New York in 2016, came here to study business at Mercy College. I ended up dropping out of college after a few years and working as a freelancer in the digital marketing space. I worked with a lot of developers and really envied like their freedom and ability to just create things while I was here, mocking up the things that they were actually creating. And so that's kind of what motivated me to look into boot camps and coding. And I finally got the confidence to quit and join App Academy. So that's how I ended up here. I graduated in when did I graduate? Graduated last year in May. So 22.
All right, great to hear that you found a lot more freedom with what you're doing right now. Do you mind telling us where you're currently working?
I work at Nomura. It's a Japanese investment bank. I work here in New York City at the New York City office. It's really cool. Hybrid schedule. So I'm loving it.
All right, hybrid,
Yeah,
a little taste of both remote and in person. Great to hear.
it's perfect.
All right, well, welcome to the podcast. Next up, we have Janira. I'm going to ask the same of you. So just brief introduction, maybe background, and also when you graduated.
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Janira. Thanks for having me. So I actually have a background in STEM education. I've worked with different nonprofits teaching the fundamentals of like Python and stuff like that. Fast forward, I really enjoy coding, obviously. I enjoy doing projects on the side. I fell in love with being able to solve problems through code. My husband, he's a software engineer. I was able to have firsthand experience with him being an App Academy alumni and seeing how much App Academy, going to App Academy and becoming a software engineer has benefited him. And I honestly fell in love with the idea of going to a boot camp and being able to come out a software developer, where, or as in this case, starting App Academy as a software developer is what I like to say. And fast forward, I graduated from App Academy March 2023, and I am currently working full time in New York right now at Interact. It's a IT consulting company, and I'm a Merck apprentice through them, working in. So I have a hybrid schedule with Merck in Rahway, New Jersey. I'm excited. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the podcast. All right, great job, great experience. I'm really glad that you guys have made it through and has found a lot of success and a lot of passion, right? That's always great to hear. So we're gonna move on to some of the questions that I have prepared for you guys. So just to talk a little bit about your experiences. Um, I don't mind which one goes first, but how was your experience during the program?
I'll go first. I had a really great experience. I know people think boot camp and they think of it just being scary and rigorous, and it is rigorous. It is, of course, an immersive. And a lot of people like myself come from non-traditional technical backgrounds, so it is a bit scary in that sense. But I honestly had a wonderful experience. I came out with a community, not just technical skills, a community of people where I still talk to today very frequently. And that's one of my biggest things. So I had a really great experience at App Academy.
All right, I'm glad to hear. As also a former instructor for you, I'm glad that I was able to provide that environment for you. Um, Jacob, do you mind giving your experience?
Yeah, I also had a great time. Same points. A great community. I will say that I didn't have a technical background coming in. I was more of a creative marketing person. And I would say adjusting to the workload was intimidating at first. The first month for me was kind of scary. I didn't know if I had made a mistake because the training materials leading up to the program were hard for me. I did have to retake one of the technical interviews, and I was a little scared when we started learning the DSNA hardcore, and I was like, I'm not getting this. I'm not skilled in math naturally. So there was a lot of like pushing myself and trying to stay confident in myself, even though I knew I was like out of my league. But by the end of it, I was like so surprised by how much I learned, so shocked at how well like the course structure was put together. The instructors were so helpful, and I mean, they really did turn me into a software developer. I did not do it alone. I had so much help, and I'm so happy that I did it.
Really glad that you brought that point up because a lot of people going in the live chat right now probably have a lot of the same feelings right now. They're not too sure how they're going to do in the program or if this is the right choice for them, right? And so I would like to hear a little bit more about that later on and how you overcame that. But I'm glad to hear that from your perspective, you've conquered that feeling, right? In the same sense, a lot of people here are also preparing to be part of App Academy, right? And so, what is something that you wish you could have told yourself in preparation for the program before starting App Academy?
Okay, I'll go. I It's hard to think about what I would have told myself because um, I feel like there's nothing I really could have told myself to change the outcome. I think I needed to struggle. I think I needed to doubt myself. I think I needed to, um, you know, have the imposter syndrome and struggle a little bit financially. Yeah, I wish I had a little more runway as far as like savings backed up. You never know how long it's going to take after you graduate to find a job. You don't know how long it's going to take to even get your projects ready or your portfolio site up and polished. And also your first few interviews, unless you're in the 1% of like perfect people, you're going to fail your first few interviews and you're going to fall on your face. And it's going to, take a second to pick yourself up. So I wish I had planned for a few extra months of buffer, but you know, just I would have told myself just stick with it and believe in yourself and commit 100%, and that's the only way.
Yeah, that's true. It's really hard to prepare for these types of things, right? Don't know what's in store for you in the future here, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's a leap of faith.
yeah, it really is. Glad to hear that it worked out for you. All right, Janera, what do you think? What do you think is something that you would have told yourself in preparation for starting App Academy?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would have told myself is to honestly come up with a more concrete schedule. I think I kind of went into App Academy, thinking maybe I could kind of balance my weekends a little bit, or maybe I could, maybe I could balance, maybe taking a little bit of extra few hours, kind of relaxing in a way. I think I would have definitely benefited from coming up with a better concrete schedule, whether it was study time, doing homeworks, creating study groups with other people, taking the time to actually do that is a big thing. But I would definitely have to say to prepare better as far as schedule.
Yeah, that's definitely key here. We definitely want a good schedule, a good structure, so that way we can best prepare ourselves for the next day, as well as planning the times that you need to take a break, right? I think that's really crucial, as I always try to tell my students that you don't want to overburn, you don't want to burn yourself out, right? You don't want to overwhelm yourself. You want to take the breaks when necessary. Try to slow yourself down, pace yourself, right? I know it's a very fast-paced program. You guys probably feel the same way, and it's important to have those moments to yourself because otherwise you will break down at some point. You will have a mental struggle, and it's going to be hard to overcome that when you're still in the curriculum, right? So definitely schedule is very important.
Yep.
All right. One of the key things that I actually joined App Academy for is because of the pair programming experience. So I was wondering if you guys found that pair programming was very valuable, or what you thought of it in App Academy.
100%. I think the pair programming was like the one thing I had no experience with or didn't even fully understand why we were doing it in the beginning. But it's one of the things that I think helped the most because you're constantly struggling with someone else, and every day you're changing that person and getting a new social experience, you're kind of like wiring your brain with different people's train of thought, so it doesn't feel like you're stuck in your own thought loops. And I felt like I didn't get stuck, stuck as much as I would alone. And when you're struggling with someone else, it's a lot easier. It's a lot less stressful. It's a lot less personal, because you're struggling with someone, so it doesn't feel like I'm the problem. It feels like, oh, we just need to figure this out. And then when there's someone that's better than you, like way better, you're like, oh my goodness, like, wow. And then you learn from them and they teach you and it's your peer. So it just feels more organic when you're learning from a peer than a PowerPoint or a video. So that's what I feel.
Yeah, to add to that, it's that sense of like, they're going through this learning process as well. So they figured something out the way they did, and maybe they're teaching it in a different way that the instructors are, right? And that's always valuable, being able to see things in different perspectives, which is one of the key things about pair programming, right? All right, Janera, what do you think?
Yeah, I would honestly even argue that pair programming was probably, if not the most important part of my experience, one of the most important parts of my experience. I went into App Academy and I still have a very social personality. I think pair programming kind of humbled me in a sense that it taught me that communication is not just being able to talk, but also being able to listen. Effective communication is also being able to listen. And that's one of the biggest things that I learned through my pair programming experience. Even after graduating App Academy, I being able to communicate my code to people like recruiters who are not technical I felt so comfortable being able to do that because I practiced every single day throughout my experience with App Academy, communicating my code, being able to communicate my code with experienced engineers. I already got that practice through App Academy every day from pair programming. So I would say it's definitely valuable. It's a necessity. I think communication, like I said, on a two-way street, being able to listen to other people's code and also being able to learn, even if you do know the topic that you're currently on and you're not struggling with it, being able to just hear a different point of view and a different angle on how to approach a problem. I've learned so much through my pair programming experience from other App Academy participants. So I definitely would say it's valuable.
If I could just bounce on that.
Yeah.
That point where there's like 1,000 ways to do the same thing, and that's with one language, and you can do the same problem in any language. And it was really, really cool to see the same problem set, the same assignment, whatever it might be, and just completely different approaches by people. And you end up at the same place, you end up with a tic-tac-toe game or whatever it might be. But, just expanding your perspective is like the main benefit of that peer programming. It was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the most important things about being a software engineer is not necessarily that you can code. 50% of it is coding, right? But the other 50% is definitely being able to effectively communicate and work with others, right? Having those soft skills is important. So if you weren't as prepared for that for the job, well, I think pair programming is one of the most important things to help prepare for that. It's actually basically how technical interviews look like as well, right?
So I would even argue that coding is less like there's typing. If most people think of coding as typing is like 10% of it. Most of it is the way you think about the problem and the way you organize the logic to solve whatever you're trying to solve. That's most of it. And the language or the framework you're using is like the boundaries, and then your logic is what actually creates something. Typing is just typing, in syntax. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a really key thing that a lot of people tend to skip over or gloss over. All right. Next question. What do you guys think about the lectures and maybe the in-person experience overall?
Yeah, I absolutely loved the in-person experience. I loved being able to, it gave me a sense of confidence, um, kind of working with people in person. It gave me confidence also to be able to openly ask the instructors questions as well. I feel like if I was kind of behind the screen, I would be more hesitant to maybe ask questions, but it kind of gave me that freedom. I also I feel like the lectures were definitely probably one of the best parts. Everything was great, but the lectures was definitely one of the best parts. I had awesome instructors, but I really was able to. I always sat at the front of the class. I was always able to have that confidence, like I said, to raise my hand, ask a question, and you guys were always willing to just answer whatever questions that I had. Maybe it was something in the homework that somebody didn't understand, and they had a question about. You guys would definitely kind of go over that. And yeah, I have to say I love my in-person experience. I think a lot of people prefer nowadays maybe remote, but I do think there's a big benefit, especially community-wise, with going in person.
Yeah, absolutely. As somebody that did this program, and as a reminder, a lot of the instructors at App Academy has gone through the program themselves, right? So as somebody that did the program remotely, and now I'm teaching it in person, I do see a big difference in terms of the community, the bonds that people make, the engagement that we have in flex times, lectures, just even answering questions, right? People can come up to me and I can help them right on the spot, right? Um, I feel that that is something I'm jealous of whenever I'm teaching. So I'm really glad that the in-person experience can provide that engagement. All right, Jacob, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, again, a lot of the same things. The first two or so, I don't know, 2, 3 weeks were on Zoom for our cohort. And so we got a taste of, the online structure, the online lectures, the breakout rooms. You have a question, okay, wait in room 10. Um, in person was just so much more fluid and organic, and it just felt like an environment that was like created for learning. And you had the dual monitor desks with 2 chairs, and it just took out all the um, you didn't have to think about anything except the content. There was no like logistics. There was no what should we do, or we're waiting for this, or it was all set up perfectly. The computers were there. The GitHub was loaded. Like it was just seamless. Asking questions, getting feedback immediately. That was, I think, the biggest. And then another thing I want to mention here about the lectures is your homework the night before is tomorrow's lecture material. And that was the best thing ever. I think every class I had ever taken up until then was your homework is, today's lecture. So you had the lecture, and now you work on, learning more about it and reading. But when you watch a video of a new concept, and then the next part is reading a whole article with code examples on the same thing, and then you show up the next day and you get a lecture from the beginning and you hear it 10 different ways, and then you start on the project for the day. It really helped that learning process. You already heard it 3 times, you already talked about it, you already asked your questions, and now you're ready to like actually play around with these concepts. I really enjoyed that structure. It worked well for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I always tell students is that the homework is more so like an introduction, right, to familiarize yourself with the concepts, right? And then as you go into the lecture the next day, you start to get reintroduced, or not reintroduced, you get a lot of the concepts thrown back at you. And now you're able to digest what's going on, as well as demonstrations, right? As well as you're able to ask questions and see from an instructor's point of view how they see what you might be struggling with, right? And then getting that on-hands experience in the project time is all the more valuable when you have all that digested knowledge up to that point.
You also have time to prepare the questions, like when you're reading through and you're like, okay, this part, I understood everything until they got to that. You can have that ready when you walk into the lecture. So the moment we get around that area, you're like, please, I need more. And in the moment, you might not do it. You might not like raise your hand, or you might be like, oh, well, maybe he'll get to it, or maybe they'll explain it further. But I felt that was cool too, to be able to prepare what you needed to focus on at the lecture or ask about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to say that online or in-person works for everyone and is better for everyone, right? Online definitely has its own benefits, right? And that kind of leads to my next question is, would you guys have appreciated a more online structure or maybe aspects of an online structure in hindsight?
Me personally, I think that I definitely chose the perfect decision to do in person. I don't think that I would have appreciated in hindsight online versus me being in person. I feel like I just feel like my in person experience that I personally had is just, it was so perfect in a way that although like there were times where I struggled, um I didn't struggle alone. I struggled with my cohort. We struggled together and we struggled through problems. And for me, that's like a big thing. And I feel like I also did partially remote for the first couple of weeks. um we were definitely collaborative online, but not as collaborative as it was in person. And honestly, that's a big thing for me. And I think definitely my location played a part. My commute wasn't as far, so it wasn't too much of a hassle for me to go in person. And in my experience, yeah.
All right, that's great to hear. I know I definitely would enjoy the benefit of online of not commuting a lot of the times, right? I know a lot of students do have to commute an hour long, maybe sometimes even an hour and a half, and it's hard, right? Is that commitment is a lot, and you lose a lot of time to study. But I've seen students do that, and they're able to make it through, right? But those type of students probably could benefit from an online program. Um, Helps with a lot of the mental stresses you might feel of being in person as well, right? All right, Jacob, how do we feel?
Yeah. In hindsight, I know I would have preferred in person. Without any hindsight, I would have said, wouldn't have been a big deal. Like I mean, I was totally fine with it staying online. I was totally fine working from home because I had been working from home, you know, every day for a year or two, 3 years at that point. Like I didn't have an in-person job really, so I was always at home working. It was normal for me. So going in person, now the hindsight comes in, it changed things. It created a reality to it where like you're commuting every day. This is what you do. You wake up. I have to wake up at 6:30, 6:45. I have to get on the train at this time. I show up. It's 9, 8:45, whatever it is. Try to get in a little early. Get a coffee. I'm ready to go. And it turned into this you know uh what am I trying to say? It turned into a habit where all I was living for was this and learning, and it kept me really engaged. And I think the relationships, the people that you talk to, keeps you going. It's not just a face on Zoom. It's like someone you're looking at, face to face. You're getting coffee with at lunch. You're going out to lunch with this group. You're going. It gives you that break too of just like the social human connection that, in hindsight, would have been missing on Zoom, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, it is going to be one of the biggest benefits of being in person, that collaboration, that engagement that you guys feel, and sort of that work environment, right? When you guys come inside, come into the office, it's going to be basically how work is in real life, right? And you have to wake up early, you have to maybe get dressed. It depends, right, on the work module that you go to, right? If you have a remote schedule, then you don't have to worry about coming to office, right? But if you are going for maybe a job that does require an in-office aspect, then it definitely helps in experiencing that, seeing maybe how you would feel about that, right? Seeing as this is a campus hybrid program, there are aspects of it that are remote, and there are aspects that are in person. And so I think going through this program, a lot of people kind of get an idea of what they like, right? All right. Another interesting part about this program is that it's quite fast of a program, right? It's 4 months that we are essentially saying, hey, you guys are software engineers, and you guys go and job search, and you guys are ready to be a software engineer. So I was wondering, how did you guys feel about the pace? Was it appropriate for your learning environment?
Yeah, I think it was. I think the main benefit of the pace is that you have to be 100% engaged, you know, 10 plus hours a day. Like you have to be there, you have to be in it, and you don't really have the option of like doing it part time with the course we took. And I think that allows you to use 100% of your brain and pick things up. In 1 or 2 days, you can learn a lot if you're just focusing on that. And an example that I like to think about sometimes is we in the SQL module, I think it was literally 1 week long, right? I took a college course on SQL in a business honors program. It was 1 semester of the SQL course, and we covered every single topic in 1 week. And like that's just one example of like how the pace is crazy, but it's also like it worked. I mean, we learned SQL in a week. It's not that complicated. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing. The concepts are the hardest part, and that's why the lectures and the course material is the key. And it's so well organized and perfected to where it's so much easier to pick up when it's outlined for you in a perfect way. They start you off, they introduce the concepts, and by day 2 or 3, you're talking about joins and left join, outer joins, and it all kind of makes sense by Friday. So I think that's the benefit of that pace is like you're in it.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the pace was very beneficial to me to learning things really quickly, right? I think for me as well, I think I could have actually benefited from a little slower of a pace, in my opinion. But I know a lot of people can benefit from a fast pace, like learning SQL in a week, right? All right, Janir, how do we feel about the pace?
Yeah, the pace is interesting. Going into App Academy, like I said, my husband went through the program. So thinking back, like him telling me, "Yeah, we just learned all of this in one day," and I'm like, "Okay, what is that? Like, what do you mean you learned all of this in one day?" And it was just like, "Okay, yeah, whatever." But then going through App Academy, it's like you really can learn a lot in one day if you're focused. And I just want to piggyback off of what Jacob said before about the homeworks. For me, the pace was perfect because we had, and this is I feel like this is the best way, at least for me to learn, to be having that first exposure, two exposures in the homework, the videos, the reading. It's curating to different types of learning styles, in my opinion. And then being able to go into lecture the next morning and then having, I would like to call it a more hands-on experience where you can raise your hand, ask questions. Hey, why do you do that? What's your experience with that? And to me, it was just the perfect pace. And then going into then doing the projects, honestly, it was fast, but we had enough to kind of get through that, or we had enough exposure where if we needed to go back to it, it wasn't as if it was just brand new. We were able to find the answers if we had a question to something. We weren't completely lost. Going into like projects or something like that, we had the basics at least. And if you don't remember everything, and we have the skill of being self learners also. So that's a big thing for me. I genuinely benefited from the pace. I'm somebody who likes to learn really fast. I watch YouTube videos on 2 times speed, so all the time. So that's like I'm just like fast with everything. And I'm a New Yorker, so everything is fast. Yeah.
All right, that's great to hear that both of you agree that the pace was just right for you guys. It's interesting that I'm playing devil's advocate, saying that I think I would have appreciated a slower pace. But that is why we offered many different programs, right? Why we can also offer an online program if the mental stress is too great. We want to avoid losing some time from the commute. Also, having more of a slower pace. I think the pace of App Academy's in-person program is going to be really tough, which is going to be something that isn't right for everyone, right? So to keep that into perspective for anyone listening. I do see a question in chat. Let me just prop that up real quick. This is a question from Nukambe. And how long did it take for you to get a job after graduating?
So for me, after graduated in March, recently started working, got my offer last month in July. So March, April, May, June, July, 4 months. It took me 4 months. And with that being said, I didn't officially start my job search until probably 6 weeks after graduating, just to keep that in mind as well. So 4 months, and to be technical, when I actually started my job search, about 3 months.
All right.
Yeah, for me, it was I graduated in May. I don't remember I think it was early May, and I think it took me about 4 weeks or 5 weeks to start the job search because you need to finish your projects. You have 3 projects by the time you graduate, and they're not in job search ready shape usually. So I polish those up, and then you build a portfolio site. So I wanted to make sure that looked good. Um, Polish up your resume. So it takes a few weeks after graduating, and then I got an offer early August and started August 23rd. So, um, 3 months or so. Yeah.
Right. I do want to make mention that the market is competitive, so it is staggering to have any job be offered in that short of a time. I would say that you guys were really working hard to get there, right? And I think that anyone working hard and really grinding out all those job applications in those times do get rewarded. So um, want to make it at least honest that the job market is going to be tough right now. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
And if
And that's
anyone
also,
does, sorry, go ahead.
it's just like, I just want to bring in like the economy. The reason the job market is because, there's been a lot of um, events happening in the economy worldwide and US specific. And that started back, during the pandemic, and there's side effects that we're still feeling today. Interest rate hikes and all sorts of things that affect the tech sector specifically. But the cool thing about programming is every sector needs programmers. So that's another counterpoint there.
Absolutely. We always are in need for programmers. All right. Yeah, we'll get back to some questions, but if you did have any questions that you wanted to ask Jacob and Gina, we don't have like more than an hour, so if you wanted to ask them, feel free to put them in chat, and we will stop and just ask those questions real quick. This is supposed to be also a Q&A, right? So feel free to put some questions. All right, but on to our next question for your experience. I was wondering, what week in the program did you find was your best week or your lowest week? Or actually, and let's do both.
I would like to say that my best week was also my lowest week. And I want to just kind of change the question a little bit. It was 2 weeks. I think definitely during the full stack project for me. Um, so to start off, why it was my lowest week? I think that I kind of it was my first time in App Academy where I think I was more so forced to kind of get used to documentation. We just came out of learning React, which was, crazy for me at least. Learning React just came out of learning React. We had to kind of go back to Ruby on Rails, which was, something that I personally didn't grasp at first. So that week of putting React and Ruby on Rails together and building this full stack application was really hard. I had to get used to documentation. I had to get used to. I definitely took advantage of meetings, for extra help and everything like that. So that was definitely my lowest week. But I have to say it was my best week because if I were to chart my progress and my growth that week, it was as if I had a boom in learning, a boom in solidifying what I've learned, and a real feeling that wow, like I'm an engineer. I think it was probably around that time where I really felt like a software engineer, and I felt like okay, yeah, I can do this. And some of that imposter syndrome was kind of going away once I saw my project coming to life. So it definitely was a big boom in growth, something that I will never take for granted. And understanding that you kind of have to go through the challenges, have to go through the push, have to struggle through in order to really get to that next level. And that was the case for me at least.
Yeah, they say pressure makes diamonds, right? So I agree with that. You guys just got to struggle. Through difficulty, you become a better developer. You're able to face the difficulties head on and know how to tackle them on. Add something to your tool belt, and you can later on, if you encounter something similar, maybe try to use that tool, right? All right, Jacob, what do we think?
Best week, worst week. Worst week was probably like the chess week, and just the algorithms week, the B search, that week for me, it it really got to me. I mean, that's where I was just literally sitting here like, this is so much. Like, I have to remember these, and I have 2 days. I have to like actually understand these, and but I had the support there. I asked questions, and I got I got help from my peers and my instructors. My best week was the moment we switched to JavaScript and the JavaScript project, and every project after that, because I was in digital marketing and graphic design beforehand, and I did web design. So finally, everything started to make sense, and I felt like I went from being at the bottom to like actually being able to put something together, and it was so satisfying to finally get that payoff for me to see something that I wrote on a screen with, you know, any sort of logic at all. It was just so rewarding. Like the first time I got like a big dopamine rush just from like coding was really cool. So that was my best week.
Yeah, I like that both of you make mention of projects and actually developing something from scratch, right? And that was one of the things that made me want to become a software engineer as well. Just the passion to just do something creative, right? Make something from scratch and have it be my own, right? So I see some questions in chat. I'm gonna put them up, and you guys can share your opinions here or share your 2 cents. It's going to be from Matt. What resources would you recommend to yourself before the App Academy program?
I'll jump on it just really quick. I didn't take any, like I said, no programming experience at all. I was not a technical person. I did not use any resources outside of what was provided. Alvin's intro to programming in Ruby was the best thing I had ever seen, and I think he explained everything to perfection. And I would watch them at 2x and then slow it down when I got lost, watch it over. So I don't think you need anything outside of what they provide.
All right, great. What do we think, Janira?
Yeah, I definitely have to say the exact same thing as far as using all of the resources that App Academy provided. I even did their Discord. I was very active on their Discord and going into the process of App Academy. Got a few lessons and stuff like that with certain things. Was able to ask questions. I really took full advantage of the resources. It was in hindsight, looking back now, I have to say that's the best thing I did to prepare myself, especially for those first couple of weeks. I the intro to Ruby with Alvin, that was just yeah, that's like the perfect. I don't think I still have never found anything that topped that. I still would probably even go back to that if I ever, for whatever reason, need to brush up on something. I don't know, but that was definitely the best thing as far as resources can come.
Yep, Alvin is the goat. He is great at what he does. Lovely. All right, another question from Nukambe. Was leak code something that you focused heavily on?
Nope. That's a nope for me. I saw a lot of people working really hard on it, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't. It really depends on what type of programmer you want to become. There's front end and back end, to put it in simple buckets, and there's full stack, and there's everything in between, and there's infrastructure engineers, and there's a thousand ways you could go. There's so many different specialities in this. So like, if you like, lead code is focused on a lot of server side, a lot of logic heavy stuff, and if that's what you're passionate about, you should do it. And if it's something you're really weak in, you can do some practice, keep going there, but maybe focus on whatever you're stronger in. If you're more naturally strong on the front end, you don't have to do lead code 100% of your free time.
All right, Janira, how do we feel?
Yeah, so I actually kind of have like a halfway point with leak code. I personally love I use leak code very heavily in the beginning of my job search. Part of that is because of the type of person that I am and what I'm more so attracted to. So I'm happy that he brought that out. It honestly does depend on who you are and what and where you are. Also, I for the types of interviews that I was doing personally, it was very DSNA heavy. So those were the types of problems that I needed to continue practice on. And I honestly like doing lead code for fun, personally, because that's just the type of person that I am, and those are the types of things that I like to do. That's what I gravitated towards. So definitely, it depends on what type of person you are. Towards the end of my, or rather, the second half of my job search, I personally slowed down on lead code. I am very, for the most part, I'm very good in DSNA. I decided to focus more on building projects, building, you come out of the program with projects. I wanted to focus on building new projects, brush up on some of the skills that I probably haven't touched in like 3, 4 weeks. And, I was neglecting that part of, my job search. And I kind of wanted to go back to that and brush up on, some things that I felt was lacking. And I learned that as I continued going through my job search, getting feedback, speaking with my coach, seeing what type of feedback I got from, job applying to different jobs and going through the interview process.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely a lot of different perspectives here on how they take the job search, right? And that will be a portion that we try to lead into in a bit. But I do want to make mention that what separates one interviewer from the other interviewer, if they get the exact same answer, is what comes down to your personality, how you were able to communicate effectively, right? So having the answer for leak code for a lot of DSNA questions for a technical interview is not going to be the be all, right? You have to have something else, right? And that's why I think that's why Jacob out here, I think he also experienced that, where the interviewer probably saw that besides just his capable skills, he also had great personal skills, right? Great soft skills.
If I could just jump in, sorry, it's like a presidential debate. You mentioned my name, so I get 30 seconds, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the interview for Nomura, I actually did not solve like 2 out of 3 questions, and my now manager told me that what actually, kind of convinced him to hire me was the fact that I followed up right after the interview with exactly what I did wrong, what I didn't understand. Oh, you can't return something in a for each loop. That. This is the actual solution. And then I asked him, well, did you review my solution? Did you give it? He said, no, I didn't even look at your solution. It doesn't matter that, it's just that you did it and like you explained yourself. And I was like, oh, this person, he's actively learning. He's actively reaching out. He's honest. So it's not just, are you perfect? It's more than that.
All right, appreciate that add on there. Next question is somewhat similar. Question for Jacob. What did you do wrong in your first technical interview?
So the one I mentioned earlier was the technical interview for App Academy, and I completely blanked. I was nervous, so nervous. And it was a, relatively, now looking back, pretty simple question. I remember specifically what it was. It was, roughly it was doing with a hash map, and I couldn't remember how to index, like get an element out of this map. I had no idea what to do. And my interviewer was just like, all right, well, you have 6 minutes left. You have 5 minutes left. And it was just like so much anxiety, and I couldn't think straight, and I just blanked out. I just couldn't do it. But they gave me another chance, and I studied for another week and a half, and I knew how to get an element out of a map after that.
I'm glad you bring that up, just because I know a lot of people do kind of just freeze in the moment, right? And that happens during assessments or even just technical interviews, any sort of showcase of your skills, right? Typically, we might even already have those skills, right? So a lot of times what I try to think about is don't over analyze the situation. Just try to do what you've been preparing for. Do it to the best of your ability, right? There's always second chances, right? And you got that second chance and you got in, right? Same thing with technical interviews. Maybe you don't get a second chance with the same job, but you will get another technical interview, right? So it's always think of it in the frame of, this is a good learning experience, right? All right. I see another question from Nukambe. That is, can we see your portfolio sites? I will link everyone's LinkedIn at the end, and I believe that both of you have your portfolio sites up there. Is that correct? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Let's get into another section of this, which is the job search experience. So I wanted to ask you both how your experience was in the job search. Maybe just a general idea of it.
My job search experience. So I think Jacob mentioned it before, you need to polish up your projects. They're not going to be job ready to just start applying to jobs. So you have to polish up your projects. That took me a couple of weeks to do. It took longer than I expected. And part of that, kind of discouraged me a little bit, because it's like, you know what, I'm graduating. I'm as soon as these 2 weeks are up, I'm gonna, hit the job search kind of straightforward and going. That didn't happen. So things kind of happened unexpectedly. Fast forward, once I started my actual job search and applying to jobs and networking more, I honestly, I was getting discouraged at all of the rejections. I was like, oh, another rejection. And it was honestly discouraging. I was thinking that maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe my projects, aren't as good as, I think they are. And, it was a bit of a discouraging feeling at first. But as I continued my job search and I talked with my coach kind of helped me out with refining the areas that I needed to refine. And that's why, I shifted from, for example, doing lead code problems more to then building projects. And that's okay. And that's something that I wish I would have known going into the job search, that it is okay to kind of shift focus and it's not the end of the world if you get rejections. If anything, most of my interviews actually taught me something in the interviews, because I caught like, oh, I messed up in this interview, and then it was a learning experience. I went back and I was able to learn from what I messed up, and I never made that same mistake again. So in going thinking now back, I'm a better programmer now because of that. That whole my whole job search experience, I do have to 100 times thank my coach. I don't know how many times I've met with this with my coach. Her name, shout out to Sharon. She definitely was just there with me through it all. Talk, just even if it was just listening to my feelings, and that was big for me. Especially since you do get discouraged at a certain point. The market is crazy right now, but it's like, oh, I'm still discouraged because you go on LinkedIn and you see people getting laid off, and it's like, oh, am I ever going to get a job? So I would honestly just say, continue going through it. That's what I did. I continued pushing through. I talked to my coach. She helped me. We figured out where I was missing pieces, and after we refactored, I got hired.
I love that. Love that. You were very communicative with your career coach, right? And the career coaches are always going to be there for you, right? Not just for getting you a job, but also emotionally, mentally, right? So having somebody there to help you along the way in your process, in your journey, was very crucial. Um, all right, Jacob, do you want to share your general experience?
General job search, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. There was, a lot of uh, not hearing back, getting ghosted. Uh, you know, you go from it being in person to at home, back to the at home life, and all of a sudden, you don't have that community. You still do. They're still there. You have the career coaches, which were fantastic. Also, the job search um, uh, team. There's a whole set of instructors that are just dedicated to job search, and you meet a bunch of new instructors. There's still, meetings and courses and trainings, and you get a lot of support, but it's different. It's different than being at the in-person cohort. So there's an adjustment period, and then there's the you're on your own filling out applications for 7 hours a day, and it's grueling. And then you have an opportunity, and if you fail, it's like, oh my god, I built everything up for this, and I didn't even get past the third Dropbox question. I didn't get past the second Dropbox question, and it's but you have to go through that in order to grow, just like you went through that in the cohort. And you eventually, with enough hard work and determination, you can get a job, and that's what happened to me. Overall, I would say it was a little lonely. It was a little hard, especially because I was running out of savings. And then it put extra pressure, like every interview. But the moment I decided to give up and stop caring about the little things of an interview, I stopped overanalyzing. I stopped putting so much pressure on this one interview. Is the first interview that I got an offer. I don't know how that works, but it was like I literally told myself, it doesn't matter what happens on this interview. I just want to be present. I want to be here. And I just want to be a person this time. I don't want to be a robot. I don't want to be a developer. I just want to be myself. And that's it. It really, it changed everything. I felt more comfortable, and I feel like I did better. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest skills to develop is that when you're in that pressure, in that spotlight, right? Trying to find who you are in that moment instead of just spitting out words that you practice over and over, right? Um, it can be very easy to do that because that's sort of like what you practice, right? But after you practice for a while, maybe things just come naturally, right? And you just show off your personality at the same time, right? Which is very crucial. And I think both of you made mentions now at this point of like how you both felt imposter syndrome, right? And maybe weren't too confident in your skills. I wanted to know, how did you guys overcome that, or what did you do to make you feel uh, better about yourselves and not have to feel that feeling again?
For me, I think I had different stages of imposter syndrome. The first stage of imposter syndrome was getting into App Academy. It is definitely one of the top of the top boot camps. I understood how rigorous it was. I knew people who went through it. Of course, my saw my husband firsthand go through it. So that imposter syndrome of me thinking like, oh, I might not even be able to get into App Academy was something that kind of got to me in the beginning, and it lingered a little bit even afterwards because it's like, do I even belong here? And I questioned myself, especially in the beginning, on so many occasions. And I definitely think um, this was another reason why I really enjoyed my in-person experience, because then you realize everybody's feeling the same way, and that's okay. And we all can grab each other's hands and pick each other up. And there's going to be times where we're all just at a point where we are worn out, and we're there for each other. But as far as getting into App Academy, going through the application process, that was, like I said, I got extra help. Like, that was a big thing. I'm like, oh, what if I can't do it? I honestly, once I got to the interview, I think I did exactly what Jacob just said with his interview with his current position. I just relaxed and I was myself. I understood that App Academy is not looking for an expert. They're looking for someone who's willing to learn. They're looking for someone who has these specifications, as far as understanding, up to a certain technical understanding. And I just honestly was myself. I went through it. Now, as far as my second stage of imposter syndrome, was definitely towards the end of App Academy into the job search. I felt as if I did not deserve anything in the job search. I had imposter syndrome, not only because of me coming from a non-traditional technical background, me not having a college degree, but also me not really having much, I want to say, work experience also, um, in different fields and stuff like that. I felt the imposter syndrome heavy. I felt as if my pitch was never perfect. I changed my pitch so many different times. And the reason why I want to even bring up my pitch is because I changed my pitch so many times. I was altering myself, and I wasn't myself at that point. I had a conversation with my coach. Like I said, I think I probably scheduled this lady to death. I had a conversation with her, and I told her my feelings, and she was just very blunt and very honest with me, and let me know, like, hey, this is not you. This doesn't sound like you. This is who Janera is. And she took me back to my original pitch. She said, this is who Janera is. This is who you are. Um, any company that you apply to and get an interview with, they're not only interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them. And if they can't accept who this Janera is, then maybe you shouldn't work there. And that was just a big realization for me. And after that, I just went into every interview. I did the very best I can. I was just myself, honestly. And honestly, I think that imposter syndrome kind of went away. And even into my current position, I didn't. I know a lot of people might go into their current positions with imposter syndrome. I truly feel basically liberated from imposter syndrome. I feel so prepared. Even in my current position, that it's really smooth sailing, honestly. Yeah, so that's my experience with that.
I think it's important that you mentioned that, it's not just an interview for you to see if you fit with that company, but it's an interview to see if you think the company fits for you, right? So it's a two-way street, right? So that's really important to realize, and I'm glad that you're able to overcome it in many multiple facets. Jacob, how do we feel?
Yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome is real. I feel like I get it anytime I'm learning something new. It immediately comes back, like at work. In January, February, I went from like being in my safe zone, which is like Node and React, to all right, now we need you to start working on a new. You have to learn Java and the Spring framework, and I want you to start creating, you know, uh, data quality checks on real-time streaming data with Solus and all these new technologies. And all of a sudden, I was like, I know nothing. I don't know what's happening. I can make a button, but I don't know what's going on here. But you put your head down. It's like going back to boot camp, and that's one of the great things that App Academy taught me is even if you feel like you have no idea which way is up, if you sit down and you learn and you teach yourself and you stick with it, I mean, it's just a matter of time before you can pick it up. You just have to start and you have to stick with it and learning how to teach yourself is part of what App Academy teaches you. You just need to look at the documentation and start playing with it. And if you approach it with like a fun, playful vibe, it's less stressful and there's so much material out there. I mean, we all know this, but like you can go on YouTube and learn anything. So, I mean, that's what I kind of do whenever I feel like an imposter is I'm like, all right, well, what am I going to do about it? There's plenty of stuff to fix that problem. So yeah.
All right, thank you. I think one thing you make mention of is like you still feel imposter syndrome, right? And that's how I feel personally too. There's a lot of times where I feel like I'm not qualified for the role I'm doing currently. There's plenty of times I feel that maybe I'm nervous in something I'm doing, right? And that's perfectly fine because that's a learning experience. You can be like, okay, I'm not too sure about this, but I can get better at it, right? I think another thing that tends to happen is that people only see the end of the tunnel, right? They don't look at the overall picture of what you've already gained, right? What you've already learned and what you've benefited. A lot of times people going through the program, at the end of the program, they're like, I don't really know if I learned a lot, right? And that's incredible to say because you created portfolio projects showing off everything you've done, right? And they tend to tunnel vision on the things they don't know, right? So it's important to just think back about what you've already accomplished. It's only a 4-month program, right? And in 4 months, you're able to learn so much. So, all right. Another question that I have for you guys is in what ways do you think different is the differences that you found in the job search of the software engineering industry versus the previous job searches that you might have done in your previous career fields?
I want to say that definitely the interviewing structure. Of course, like the technical interview is definitely, of course, a big one. But the interviewing structure, as far as I think in software engineering, I've never had to say my pitch as much as I've done in. I feel like this industry, it seems like I never knew that. It seems like there is a stressor on getting to really know who the person is. And I know that's like a cliche thing to say, but from my experience, yeah, they say, tell me a little bit about yourself. But in my interviews, in my job search experience, it's like they really want to hone into who you are as a person. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Oh, cool. Tell me a little bit more about that. Like they want to know more about my non-technical I've experienced. They wanted to know a little bit more about my non-technical background than not. I feel as if my interview process was definitely more stressful. I'm not gonna lie, definitely more stressful preparing for the interviews, both behaviorally and technically. Being able to kind of I want to say like market myself in a way. It's like, oh, I really like, it would be great if I got this job. Like, let me practice my behavioral questions a little bit more, my technical interviewing questions a little bit more. Whereas other jobs that I've had in the past, I didn't really need to do that. I come from the, like I said, the education sector. So it's more so about curriculums and what are you going to be teaching and how successful this will basically be. Whereas in tech, it's like they want to get to know your personality so they can know what team to put you on, for example. They can have an idea where you'll fit within the company. It's a lot about company culture. And honestly, in my experience, I felt very open to ask a lot of questions about the companies that I was interviewing for. How is your culture like? Talk to the different employees. I felt so open to just go on LinkedIn, like, hey, I would love to have a call with you about, I'm having an interview with so and so. I just want to know your experience before my interview. And I felt so comfortable doing that because everybody's so open in everything is about culture. I feel like in this industry, at least from what I've seen, versus, like I said, everybody before, like the education sector is like, what can you kind of do, what curriculum can you kind of make, and in that sense, yeah.
I'm glad you highlight the culture difference. I do feel like the software engineering industry as a whole is very welcoming, right? It's very uh, it makes you feel like you're always part of the community, no matter from what background you're from, and they are interested in that background, right? And they want to get more. They want to get to know you more and more. So definitely agree with that. All right, Jacob.
Yeah, so I only really had a few interviews, like a few job search interviews outside of, um, post App Academy. Like pre App Academy, I was like a freelancer in digital marketing, and I kind of like found my own clients, and I didn't really have this like structured interview where I was more so like pitching clients, so it was a little different. But I did have one interview or two interviews where I stopped being a freelancer and I wanted something more structured and full time. And there was no like exams or take home assessments or anything like that. All that was new to me. So you know, uh, being able to pass a certain threshold, even before you get to talk to someone, was a little hard to deal with at times. That was a little surprising. Um, I had never really dealt with like that whole 30-minute live, monitored exam before you can even speak with a human. That was a little kind of off-putting at first, but I get it now. It's a different sector, and like they need to verify that you're who you claim to be, and but those were some of the biggest differences. After you get through that stage, I felt like it was similar to other things where it is behavioral. They're trying to understand who you are. They go over your code that you maybe did in the test take home assessment, and they're more so looking at how do you explain your code, how do you communicate, are you open to others' criticism and ideas on how to improve your code, because that's another big part of the job. It's not like just writing it; it's refactoring it and learning from others, almost like pair programming. Sound familiar? So the biggest difference for me was like that barrier before you can even talk to someone. That was a little difficult to deal with.
Yes, definitely. Glad to hear that you also agree in that the industry is more welcoming here. So think we're going to move on now. We are over an hour, and I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about your on-job experience. So I wanted to know how work is for both of you currently, and what important skills that you might have developed during the program that helps you in your day-to-day at work.
Yeah, so for me, I am more so in the training stage. But I have to say that, and I know I touched on a little bit with the imposter syndrome question. I realized that App Academy really prepared me for everything that I'm doing now. Being able to learn, so right now I am training and learning Python. I of course did Ruby. We didn't do Python. We did Ruby, JavaScript, and Python. I had experience as far as fundamentals, but really getting into the language is definitely and building projects with it is definitely different than just teaching the fundamental concepts. So for me, it was honestly a smooth transition into the training. I definitely have to say the paired programming portion of App Academy prepared me the most. Being able to communicate my code, you would think that I've been an engineer already for maybe 2+ years. I feel so confident in explaining my code. I feel confident in asking the right questions. Also, that's a big thing. Being able to ask questions and the right questions. I feel like the way that App Academy structured its program, and I told another coach this. I was an engineer basically from the first day, from my first class of App Academy, because I have like this experience of working in groups, working with other people, collaborating. Um, and of course the technical experience and being able to learn a language in one day or week and being able to apply that as soon as possible. So honestly, I feel so I feel really great right now in my current position. I am happy to be able to apply my skills to solve real world problems. That's a big thing for me, and being able to see that in fruition. Yeah, I'm just really happy about that.
All right, that definitely hits a stride with me too. I definitely feel like there was a lot of things in preparing for the program, through the program, that helped me as an instructor, right? Not just the material, but just the ability to communicate with students as well, right? So definitely glad that a lot of these skills that you built up are helping you in the job currently. All right, Jacob, how do we feel?
Yeah, so I'm part of the data quality team at Nomura. So our team is Data Quality Engineering, DQE. And so we provide a set of applications, front-end applications that allow users. Our users are basically departments of the firm. So the risk department, the trading department, the HR department, whoever it is, doesn't matter. They have data. So they have data sets, and that could be anything from a CSV file to a SQL database to NoSQL. Doesn't matter. We support it all, and the interface allows them to build data quality rules, and then we run those rules on their data, whether it's a scheduled basis or a real-time streaming basis, and then eventually those rules are broken. Amount is missing, or the date is in the wrong format, or whatever it might be, and then they have exceptions that are generated. Then they can assign those exceptions, manage them, track them, create issues, resolve them, make sure they don't have any regulatory impacts, because everything in finance is about SEC, and that's just America, so we're a global company. So it's really interesting. It's really cool. I celebrated my 1 year 2 days ago. So thank you. Over the year, like my role has like completely transformed, and I really appreciate that. Every time I felt like comfortable finally with something, uh, my managers, gave me more slack and more responsibilities. And then, like I mentioned earlier, around January, February, I switched from like a React kind of focus dev to a Java like backend focus dev. Um, and I spend most of my time there now. And it's been really cool, like completely learning a new world. And then every now and then I'll log back into the exception manager and, do some React stuff and hook up this project that took me 6 months to do, and make some more enhancements on the front end. And it feels natural and comfortable still. And being able to merge those worlds together has just been like the highlight for me. And App Academy prepared me because I had to basically put myself through another boot camp when I was given that opportunity to, you know, grow into a true full stack engineer and not just be focused on Node.js backend, but actually dive into Java microservices, build real-time connectors with Solus and Kafka Streams, and not be intimidated by just this massive amount of new technologies that were in front of me. I could have just I had the opportunity. They asked me, "Do you want to do this? You can stay in React, you can stay over here. But if you want to, yeah, we'll give you, a seat in this project, and you can dive into it." And I was like, "Yeah, of course, I'd love to. I know I can do this because I already did it. Like I just did this 8 months ago. I just did this. So here I am 6 months later, and that project's in production, and it's just so rewarding to be able to grow like that, and that's because it was proven possible by App Academy in 4 months. I mean, I went from literal zero knowledge to a job, and yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate that both of you make mention of like you're going through another boot camp, or you're experiencing the exact same things as in the boot camp, right? When you're on the job. Because like Junior said, on day one of joining App Academy, you were already a software engineer that was getting into the exact environment where you're learning every day. You're learning at a fast pace, and you're trying to create new projects. You have deadlines, right? You're working with groups. It is the same concepts, really, right? The same idea, and you guys both are, able to overcome that because you've already went through that experience before. So I definitely think that that's really key in terms of going into a new job here in the software engineering industry, just having that prior experience here, so that you can essentially recall from your prior experiences how you can overcome certain difficulties. All right. Don't want to spend too much more time here, so I'll open up for some Q&A here. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them. In that time, also going to share the LinkedIn's for Jacob Engineer here. And then shortly, I'll also share both their portfolios. But is there any last questions that we have for both Jacob and Janera? All right. We got somebody saying that Jacob is giving a lot of hope for this journey. Happy for him.
Thank you. You've got this. Stay positive. Believe in yourself.
All right. And then we have their portfolio sites here if you want to take a look at those as well. But in the meantime, do we have any other questions? No, doesn't seem like it. I got one more potential question, is that is there anything that you guys want to share for potential new students that might benefit from hearing, or maybe some advice?
Honestly, it's gonna be hard. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. It's gonna be hard. I have to say though, don't give up. You deserve it. You deserve to be here. You deserve to be in the program. You deserve to continue to go through the program, and you deserve everything after the job search. I've known in people in my cohort who before App Academy has never looked at code a day in their life, and they are thrive. One person that I can think of right now, they're just thriving. They just got an offer. They're thriving in their position right now, and I am just so happy for her. And she hasn't done code before, um, and it's people like me who even come from somewhat of a technical background, who then leave App Academy with just this boom of knowledge that I would have never even dreamed of having or could fathom having. And being able to call myself a software engineer is such a it's like I go back to being a kid, and it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's like, you say all these different things when in actuality it's like I can say that I'm happy in the position that I actually chose. And with that being said, just continue striving through, continue, don't be afraid of the tests. Embrace them. Definitely study. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Definitely study. Use the time to study. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no stupid question. Ask the question, look it up on Google, do something, but don't just hold it to yourself. And you all got this.
Really appreciate the closing thoughts here, Janira. Jacob, do we have any last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Janira kind of stole everything. Everything you said, 100%. For me, I would say, don't do this if you're half in, half out. This is something that is like gonna change your life if you do it, and you need to be 100% committed. I said it was a leap of faith earlier because for me, like it was 100% a leap of faith. Like I didn't graduate college. I don't have a degree. There is no backup plan if this doesn't work out. I knew that going in. I knew that I had a job. I quit that job, and I couldn't go back to that job even if I wanted to, which I did not. It was toxic, and I didn't like it, and I wanted to explore something new, and I knew I wanted to learn how to code. And I just 100% jumped into that dream, and I found App Academy. I felt confident, even just in the bootcamp prep. I was like, okay, they know what they're doing. They're going to give me everything I need, and I'm going to put 100% in. And within a week, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And that's going to happen to you. That's going to happen to you if you decide to do it. And it's going to happen to you every week after that. And that's the beauty of it, is if you don't feel like that, if you don't feel that uncomfortable, I don't belong here feeling, then you're not growing. You're not pushing yourself. And that's what App Academy does. Like they will push you every single week. And it doesn't matter who you are. If you're great at math, there's all sorts of people in your cohort that they're strong in all different fields. And you're going to be one of those people where you're strong in something and weak in the other. And that's the cool thing about the full stack course is you go from ground zero. You start with DSNA, you understand the fundamentals, and you start learning about the web and networking, and then you learn about JavaScript, and then you learn about React, and then you realize everything does kind of come together. And you're going to be strong in something, and someone else is going to be strong in something else. And that's why companies have many developers. They don't have one. And you're going to fit somewhere in that piece, but you need to push yourself and be committed the whole time, even when it's uncomfortable and it's not something you're strong in. I think that's my advice.
Very inspirational. I love hearing from both of you. You guys have been great. I really appreciate you both coming on to share your experiences. And it's been a pleasure hosting this for everyone. If you guys have any additional comments, feel free to post them on after the stream is ended. We could always, on YouTube that is, we could always reply to those and maybe take a look at Janira and Jacob's LinkedIn, stay in contact with them.
Yeah, please do.
All right. Well, this has been a great stream. Hopefully everyone was able to take something out of this. And we're going to end the stream. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks, King Ka.
Thank you.